An ancient paradox states that if we always cover half the distance between where we are and where we want to be, we'll never arrive. So the purpose of this video is to explore the concept of mindfulness, specifically as it relates to social inclusion and civil engagement.
Engaging generations through mindfulness. Welcome. As Steve had mentioned, without mindfulness, without respect, without trust, without forgiveness, and most of all, caring and sharing, we lose big time. In this video, you'll hear from a series of elders and young people relating to what mindfulness means to them. The emphasis here in this video is to identify how we can better our relationship amongst the Cardston and the Blood Tribe communities.
Communication is number one. You get to know people, you form friendships, and that's what brings people together. You've got to break down the barriers that cause people to feel different from one another, and the personal interactions, you know, like some of the things that the Shiny House is doing are even probably more important. You know, coming together group to group is good, but coming together person to person, I think is even stronger when we have those personal relationships and get to know people on an individual basis and have, you know, actual friendships develop through those kind of communications and doing things together.
Well, it has to do a lot with the individual. They have to work on themselves. They have to get rid of, they have to let go of whatever past hurts they've gone through, whatever painful hurts they went through. They need to take care of that first. They need to work on that because it can affect their personal life. It affects the way they behave. Their attitude has to be healed. Their behavior towards themselves and other people, it affects that. That's the way I understand it. But in order to do it, the person has to work on themselves, be able to see, you know, change the way they think, change the way they feel about things, change that so they can see things in a better way, in a positive way, or in an optimistic way. Instead of thinking in a negative way, well, everything is bad all the time. Well, that's not so. It's, you know, I mean, it's one of the best parts of the land or country that we live in. It's a gift from God, the creator of life, and it's a nice place to live, but we have to live in harmony with everything. Not just the land, but the human being part. We have to live with each other. We have to get along, whether we like it or not. Whether we have to, you know, overcome these challenges. That's the only way it has to.
I think that they need to deliberately set out to make events and things like that it doesn't seem like everybody, so they don't feel like it's segregated, like if there's something taking place out in the reserve that the people from Cardston go to it, and if there's something taking place in Cardston itself that the people from the reserve feel welcome and want to go to that too. I think that's the most important thing, because once they become that, there's really nothing wrong with that other guy, they'll just become friends and they'll be... But I think it has to be set up deliberately because it hasn't really happened on its own.
I think people should stop pushing each other around and start to listen to one another. It's like not to kind of intersect people's thoughts and what they believe in, kind of. And I think that's the main point around in the city and the towns and schools is people dislike each other by the way. It's not so much as still the culture, but it's just as much as people, how they are, how they look. If you look kind of poor, you're going to be treated pretty bad. So it's kind of a crazy, it's about how you look, so it's an appearance around when you're youth. So in my case, I just dress, I also dress sharp, dress like you're going to be somebody. And I think if you have that kind of attitude, there's no stopping you. People will respect you more and tend to try to listen to you rather than treating you like garbage on the street.
When I first moved here, I was like 8 or 9. I was pretty young, and I had come from a village, like a community where there was no diversity, and I had never seen different kinds of people and stuff like that. So I noticed a lot of sort of segregation and sort of a distance that I didn't really understand because I had never seen that before in my community. But since I've seen it progress though, like since I've become older and I've seen others try to reach out and I've seen some good happen, I feel like there's so much more that we can do. But I think that there is communication that has been opening up and there's a definite potential for change and it's already started to happen. So I think that's good. I've seen definite progress.
I have to treat every human being with the same way the sun's rays affect each and every human being, every creature, every living thing, everything on earth in a good way. So that's the path I'm trying to follow. When I first started studying, I said, I can do that. But the more I thought about it, I said, that's right. Because I have people here that have hurted me. White people have hurted me. They've hurted me lots of times when I was young. And they have lots of people here. So I have to see through this. And I guess that's the part there. It was a little cloudy, but yet the sun's rays work their way through. So in order to do that for myself, I have to be mindful and always have to be, respect the teachings that are.
I know that my folks felt helpless, and Father said it isn't fair, to take those children and force them to abandon their language and their principles and force them to learn. On the other hand, they were there to learn, and a great many of them learned successfully. But I remember the folks. But if they ever came to our house, even as I grew older, even up until maybe 19 or 20, that if they ever came to our house, Mother always loaded them up with food and loved them. And we were taught to have a great respect and love. And I meet you today, and I feel very honored that you would interview me today.
I treat everybody the same.
Yes.
I don't care who they are. That's why the Indian people love me. I know they do.
Yes.
We had a lot of business there, and they did. But I treated them as fair and as honest as I would my neighbor or anybody else.
Yeah, that's good
and you
too.
got to be. That's the way it's got to be.
I think the greatest, most wonderful thing that could happen is that the mindfulness could continue to spread as it has since I was born. It's a different situation now. I see beautiful native faces. I see people that have decided to take hold of their destiny. I've seen people that have taken pride in what they believed in, what their fathers believed in. And so in our great country,
and our little town of Cardston, we can respect, we must learn to respect each other's view, each other's background, each other's teachings from the fathers, and also, as we talked about earlier, how we feel about not only each other but nature around us, and the respect that we show to good Mother Earth, who provides us with all that we need. I would like to compare it to climbing a mountain. If you start up the mountain and as you go up, it gets steeper and steeper, and the oxygen supply gets less and less.
Yeah, yeah.
The temptation is say, let's stop, or let's rest a while, or let's go back down because it was much more comfortable down. We must never look back. We must always look to the peak of the mountain.
Yeah.
And when our heart begins to fail, we must take shorter steps, but never look back. Adjust our pace forward, but never look back.
Yeah.
And so it's my hope as a member of this community that the young people will be able to see the vision and be able to grasp the things which will be most helpful in their lives and not turn back.
It's natural human tendencies to associate first with the people that you have the most in common with.
Yes.
And the way we break those barriers is so we get to know people, we get to be friends with them. I mean, I grew up, you know, there were many people from the Blood Reserve that went to high school with me. I mean, I was maybe not the best example. I was kind of a shy, a little bit more introverted, but yeah. You know, some of the Keith and Dan Chiefman were I considered my friends. Don Shade I kind of considered my friends.
Not really that much. The first thing that I saw that really gave me optimism that this was going to happen is China House had a thing out, the recreation thing, and Moses Lake, and I was surprised a number of people from town that went there. That's the first time I ever got optimistic.
So Kimba Babies is to be able to work with individuals, the community, and where's the way to be able to share. And I think the key to Kimba Babies is to listen. Listen what they're saying. And when you hear them out, like they could be very well misinformed about certain things. And you said, oh no, this is not the way it is. And to be able to work with Kimba Babies is to put dignity into that person and to work through things.
You know, I've never been involved enough in politics, if you want to call it, to really know. But I know it's terribly important to work together and to understand each other's feelings. And oftentimes we don't. Well, it's difficult for us, you know, unless we can actually communicate person to person, and that's part of the beginning of this communication and growing in strength. You might even call it spiritual strength, you know.
Yes.
It's more than just a physical thing. It has to be from the inner self.
Well, if I see it, and the word, and I wish they'd bury it, Indian. There's no Indians in me here. They're individuals. I treat everybody with my open heart. That's the way I like to do it.
Well, I'm positive about the future. I think things are going to change probably remarkably in the future. I think we should
Yes.
Look for every opportunity, whether we have good things or whether we have, let's just rejoice in the blessings that we have. But if we have difficult times, which I'm afraid that we will, but having said that, I can see that it could be a positive thing for our local communities to say, let's pull together. Let's say, we can do it by working together. We can overcome obstacles and challenges, and in doing that, we'll form greater friendships, and we can erase some of these boundaries, and we can we can learn more.
The young, and doesn't matter what age, the native and non-native, be re-educated in our ways, orally. Allow us to share that in your communities, share in our culture with them, and not just through the social part, but the spiritual part. Make them understand, because our spirituality has been with us since the beginning of time. That's the way I understand it, through the elders. That's the way they explained it. That's the way I understood it. It's been a part of us all our lives, their lives and lives beyond that. So we have to start sharing that. But like I said earlier, they have to heal. They cannot come in here and say, well, I'm just curious to know what's going on.
Yeah.
With that kind of attitude, well, you're not going to learn anything. All you're going to see, your perception is, well, there's a bunch of Indians dancing and hooting and howling. It's nothing to me. It's no meaning to me. But if you're connected to that spirituality, then you make the difference. Then you'll understand it's about the spirituality of our people. Because we've been practicing it for a long time. That's what makes a person heal. Then we become, we know we have harmony with everything that was created by God or the creator of life. We understand that part, we start respecting everything else. But if you have no respect for the human being, how are you going to respect anything else? That has to come. It's difficult, I understand, because of the lifestyle we have today. It's difficult, I know that. But if you're willing to live together in this community, we have to do that. I'm not the person, you're not doing it for me. I'm not asking anybody, but I'm sharing this so that people can start to think for themselves and say, well, hey, maybe there is a solution, maybe there is a way to do it. Instead of dwelling in the past hurts, whatever has happened a long time ago. What's done is done. You can't undo it. But it's today, and we have to, today we can do those things. Learn from what happened, whatever when it did happen a long time ago.
Well, I think it will get better if we set out and make projects and things that kids do together, because one thing I noticed is that at the event that I was at, that the older people were sort of leery of each other. They didn't know, not that they didn't want to, but they didn't know what to say. But I see the kids all off in the corner playing. If they get the kids together, eventually it'll work itself out all on its own. If you can get the kids together.
That's right.
The next generation, it'll work itself out all on its own. That's the way I see it.
Yes. Yes.
And if you don't, nothing will change.
I think it's going to be totally different than the way it is now. It's going to be a lot more, it's going to be bigger, there's going to be a lot more population surrounding areas such as Cardston and Lethbridge, and the city is going to be, I think it will be bigger and a lot more things to handle, but I think we could get through it if people would just listen once in a while instead of, like what I said, it's kind of a, how do you say, I don't know, just the term isn't pushing around, but you know, like, I think there's got to be a lot more of ground-based to where native cultures could react with, you know, cultures that are not in that ethnic group. And if we all, like what we're doing with the Shina House thing, it's good they're having a bunch of people that are different in culture-wise, and they got different background. They're coming together and they're doing murals and they're doing plays. So I think we need a lot more of that if we're going to get by in the future. If we're going to, if things are going to be humble, it has to keep what we're doing now. It has to be bigger than it is. A lot more listening.
Ideally, I think that it would be great if we could just eliminate all forms of differentiating the two races, you know, and the two types of people. There's a lot of things that we have, like at our schools and in our communities, that sort of try to highlight, you know, the differences. And I think that's good in a way, but I also think by highlighting the differences, we're also sort of segregating each other more. And so I think that we should respect each other's cultures, but hopefully in the future we will get to a point where there's no Moses Lake or Cardston. There's only one community, because it's kind of silly how it's just, you know, across the road, and it's still such a barrier. And I just think, you know, in the schools there should be, you know, culture classes, but no sort of like just native or Caucasian classes or whatever. And I just think that by eliminating those types of programs that are maybe trying to help but are really just, you know, destroying the progress in subtle ways. That's how I feel personally. But
okay, be proud of who you are. Okay, the Creator, He brought you in here as, like for myself, as a Ganek one. Okay, you have to honor that. So in same thing with the Cardston, they're white people. So the idea here for the future is we have to listen to each other. I think we have to be inclusive. That's what we need. That's what needs to happen. So in order for the Southern Alberta to flourish, we have to get away from this, you know, this apartheid and all that. So we have to start saying, okay, well, yeah, we've been trying that for them. It's not working. So okay, let's set up a good foundation and let's work together. And again, that's what needs to happen.
Well, I don't really know what your personal religious status is, but I'm a very firm believer. In fact, it's almost a spiritual knowledge that God lives, that He loves us, and He wants us to be happy. And we have to work for that. He didn't say it would be easy. And so working and cooperating and laboring with all our might, we win. And we do find that happiness that God wants us to have on earth. And as sad as the world is now, it's becoming very worldly, as we call it. There are things that we can do in the way of righteousness, honesty, honor. My father was very strict about our principles. You know, doing what was right, loving our fellow men, and all those things. And as a result, we lived in a home that never heard a cross word. There was love and peace there, and that spreads out. It doesn't just stay in your home. We have wonderful neighbors, and everyone loved everyone. You know, so it sounds simple, but it takes that everyday devotion.
Cardston and the Blood Tribe are very strong in religion and spirituality. With that, teaching our children and their children is a strong foundation for us to reach a socially inclusive environment for both the Blood Tribe and Cardston. We are very blessed and gifted by the Creator, what He has provided us with. The land, He has provided us with the resources, the understandings and teachings that our elderly have received. It is time to go back to our elderly and to reach out and hear the legacies of our heritage, both Cardston and Blood Tribe. With that, we are guaranteed to sustain our relationship for years to come, and for, most importantly, our children's future.